Hello and welcome back to Shutterbug Club. I'm your host, Sue, and we have a guest with us today. I thought that I had the weirdest last name, but Celeste just told me what her last name is. So, Celeste, why don't you go ahead and say your name?
It's Quackenbush. Quack like a duck. E.N. Bush.
Okay, if that isn't the weirdest last name you've ever heard, I would love to know what other last names you've heard. If you are a creative and you run a creative business, you probably know how it feels to start working just to pay the bills and not for fun. You almost lose the spark and motivation because you are just working all the time. And so sometimes it's really good to just work for free and just do a project just for yourself. So, we're going to be talking about that. Over the summer, Celeste and I did 3 really big photo shoots, and they were just for fun. There was no clients, no money involved. It was just her and I and our creative visions. And these photo shoots were so healing and so inspirational. I felt just so fueled after them. And it was just truly magical. So, we're going to talk on that later. But first, I want Celeste to go ahead and introduce herself and tell us what she does.
Awesome. I'm happy to be here, by the way. So I'm a farmer florist, and I've been doing this for 5, 6 years, and really hopped into it because of my kids. Um, and I was already gardening, just kind of sitting at home thinking how I can re-enter the workforce, what I can do while making my own schedule. And since I already had the love for flowers, I just thought, let's just give it a go. Did the New York Art Institute florist certification, and just, to really understand just what is expected for florists in the realm of weddings. So started that right around COVID, so or a year before COVID hit, and as all of us vendors were hitting the ground running after that, had a crazy 3 years, 3, 4 years, and now I'm trying to actually slow down a little bit because, like you said, is the burnout and just a lot. And I know a ton of vendors who also feel like they're in that space. But that's what I do, and I'm a mother of 2. We have a small micro farm, just Dolores, Colorado, and I try to pump out as many blooms as I can there, but I also substitute. So, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
I don't know if there's like a way to describe your style of floristry, but I feel like you have a very unique style than other florists around here because you do weddings,
Thank
but
you.
they're very creative. Celeste did my wedding also because I just had this vision and I knew that she was going to be able to do it, and it was everything I wanted. But she loves like
Mm-hmm.
the color in the flowers, so not just like white wedding flowers, which I think is so beautiful. Is there a way to describe your style? I don't
Same.
know.
Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of hard. I do have a lot of people who come to me for wildflower natural vibes, and it's it's hard because people have a different idea of what wildflowers looks like. So sometimes someone will send me, inspiration, and it's not very wildflowery. It's just very floral heavy. But then they're like, I love this wildflower view. And I'm, oh, okay. Like, I love that too. I'm not sure I would call it wildflower, but it's beautiful. So I do tend to love weddings that have more color. I do tend to love weddings that really, I would say, incorporate fresh grown flowers. So farm grown flowers like dahlias, lisianthus, zinnias, it's, just things like that that maybe you're not going to get so much when we order flowers. But from a farm, when you can go there and, oh my gosh, like you're growing a peaches and cream dahlia, and that's just beautiful. And it has all this variation of color and tone, and it's just a different shape. And so I would say I'm kind of a blend between like flower farm and wildflower. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was a great explanation,
Okay.
and I can see that in your work. So, when you started your flower business, Did you start it because you were already growing flowers and you wanted to make money with it, or?
I think it was just because I missed working, which is just like kind of silly because sometimes now I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I should just be a stay-at-home mom still. There are definitely days where I just want to slow down and just do that. But I really missed working, and I was sitting there at home thinking, okay, what can I do to work with the kids? So I already was growing the flowers, and at the time, Florette, a lot of people know about her. She's based in Washington, and she has amazing resources for flower farming, and she has really beautiful and also really informative books on flower farming. So I just happened to get a hold of one of her books also. And I was like, oh, I'm just going to go for it. Let's just try. And we started with our backyard had at the time it was just this really dinky plot. I mean, we've done a lot to it, but beforehand it was awful. Like weeds didn't grow there. It was just like rocks. And we just went for it.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's so cool. I love to hear how you started so small, just in your backyard, and it's still in your backyard, but
Yeah.
your garden seems so big. You have so many flowers.
It seems, oh my gosh. Sometimes when I'm taking care of it, because it's just me, I'm just like, oh, this is plenty, this is enough. But I would say, all in all, I grow about a quarter of an acre, and it just sometimes feels so small, especially when I see other flower farms. And really, in our area, I'm pretty comparative to some of the flower farmers. But I mean, there's even some flower farms in Durango that, they're growing on a full, like 2 acres. That's just flowers. And it's unbelievable. It's beautiful. And I'm like, I want
Yeah,
more land. Yeah.
that is cool, but it's also fun to have it at your house because it makes your house more magical. I feel
Mm-hmm.
like I love going to your house and picking up my flowers. So you started in like 2020, you said, right? Around COVID?
Probably 2019 is when I first dove into it. And I mean, I just like tipped my toe into the pond.
Mm-hmm.
I probably did like 3 or 4 weddings that year and a couple of elopements. And then a plethora of photo shoots with some vendors who had moved in at the time. And then 2020 hit, and it was, the year that COVID was happening. And so it was just a funky year. And I would say that year, I mean, man, I probably still did like 12 to 15 weddings, which is a feat because it was COVID. I'm shocked that none of those, for me, for whatever reason, rescheduled.
Really? You
It
didn't
was
have a
very
single
weird.
one?
Yes, it's very strange.
Wow.
Every client I had that year somehow had the ability to just like, oh, we're just knocking it down in numbers. And
Wow.
so it just basically everything that year just turned to like a small private micro wedding. And I just don't think they wanted to give up flowers. And also, it was easy for me to be there because I don't really have to be around anybody.
Mm.
So I think everyone was like, that's fine, just come.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
nice.
Yeah.
What year was your busiest year?
Ooh, okay. It's 2025. I have to do the math. 2023
Okay.
was my busiest year. Right? Because last year was 2024. Yeah, 2023 was my busiest year. And I just to clarify for people, I do have helpers. I have freelancers come and help me when I'm having a busy season or I have large weddings, but I don't do a full out shop or anything. I don't have a full on hired team. So I know that there's florists out there who do, 80 plus weddings for a season, and that's amazing. But I still probably did most of what I could with just me and Donnie, and she's like my best flower friend. And so we did about 44 that year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
And that was solid. I'm going to be honest, I don't want to do it again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is a lot. So would you say that 2023 was the year you felt the most burnout?
Surprisingly, no. I think I did such a good job that year of preparing mentally, just okay, because so many people had scheduled so early because of COVID. I had people who had booked out like 18 months in advance. So everything that I had booked up, I was very, very like mentally prepared for. So even though I had no weekends off and many of those weekends were double headers, I don't know, I think I fared with it pretty well. I definitely would say I had a normal amount of burnout at the end of this season where I was like, oh, thank goodness, like October's over. I'm done. I'm out. Peace. Get a, recharge for a few months. But I would say the worst year for burnout was actually this last year, which was nuts.
Do you have any idea of why you think that is?
I think it was a combination. Because as with anybody, you can't control what's happening in your life. And how do you balance when life goes funky in other areas, but you're an entrepreneur, you have a business, or even people who just have a job, they can't take time off or whatever. So it was just one of those instances. I did try to slow down last year, but I still ended up taking on about like 25 total projects. And by the time fall came, I just thought, okay, I'm going to feel that relief. I'm going to feel like, ooh, okay, I made it. I'm done. I can turn off. But I wasn't able to turn off. And we had a bunch of family stuff going on. And it just never felt like, okay, you can sit down and you don't have anything to do. You can just breathe. It was like, no, like I'm on and I have to do something. And even when I was relaxing, I couldn't relax. And it's just started to get better in the last like couple of weeks.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I know that's hard to go through. And that's really interesting too, because I've been thinking about this idea a lot that burnout doesn't come from doing a whole bunch of things. Like you said, your busiest year wasn't the year you felt the most burnout, but it comes from doing the wrong things.
right.
And so that like relates a lot to what you said about just life being kind of chaotic that year, and you felt almost like you needed to put more energy into your life things instead of your business things, but you didn't have the time to do that, and so you were getting burnt out because you didn't feel like you were giving the energy to things that needed it.
100%. Yeah. And then I just felt disconnected with work, honestly, because all this stuff going on in our family life. And I was just kind of internalizing that and then not knowing how to just say, say, no, 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 I need to sit at home with my kids and we need to not do anything. And, but I didn't do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you know what you would say like the signs of burnout are? Can you kind of detect it when it's coming?
Mm. So I think everybody's obviously going to react a little bit different. I get, I think my telltale warning signs are when I know I'm going and I'm very aware that I'm going and I'm like, it's okay, just keep going. So it's kind of like this little voice inside my head that's like almost peer pressuring me, like keep going. But then, deep down, I'm like, maybe I know, like when does it stop? Like there's
Oh
this little
no, yeah.
question. And so I think really if I could have just been aware that I was aware, I don't know how to explain that. That's
No,
hard.
yeah.
Yeah. But other than that, I think my body personally, I start to physically take on symptoms as opposed to mentally. So, as you know, I got crushed by like migraine wonderland back in December, and that's when I really knew that I had overdone it. And it was just 3 weeks of nonstop migraines and vertigo, and then anxiety and adrenaline, just walking around for days, just feeling like I'm gonna hop off a cliff and or go run a marathon, having this insane amount of energy, but then at the same time having no energy at all and not wanting to do anything. And you just feel it in your chest and in your stomach, and you're just sitting there. You're like, what am I doing? Then it's just confusion for me, just total confusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I resonate with all of those feelings that you're explaining. And I've only recently felt that way this last year. And recently, because I feel like I've experienced burnout a little bit, and I feel like there's definitely different levels of burnout.
Mhm.
But I feel like only this last year I've gotten to that point too where I'm like almost making myself sick and I'm just telling myself keep going.
Yeah. And it's like, why do we do that? I know so many people who do that. And I don't know if I do know guys who do it. I've, I definitely know guys who do it, but I've seen so many women do it to the point like where we're sick, where our cycle's off, where, we're either losing or gaining weight and we, haven't changed anything else, right? Or we're just full of anxiety, just not sleeping well, and maybe our cortisol levels are off, whatever, because that is a stress hormone, and then that directly affects our other hormones, and we're just thrown.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any kind of tips that you can give to help get past that, or what are some of your go-to things to just calm down or give yourself a break?
Okay, so after really having to focus on that the last few months, I have learned a few things. One, it's okay to shut the world out, and I've been doing that. And even, oh, this is awful if any of my brides hear this, but I had to shut work out for a little bit, and it was like I didn't even have the energy to say like, hey, I'm out of town or anything like that. It was just I couldn't. Like I was just off, and I knew I needed to be off. And if I didn't give myself that time, I wouldn't be able to hopefully, right, reset by the time I need to actually put my butt in high gear for these ladies. And I gave myself that time. So that's been really nice since December, and having the full physical breakdown of everything. The other thing that I did was I just gave myself the time to be at home and not do anything. And I mean, I probably sat at home for like 2 weeks and just read, took baths, took naps. Like my system was just so overloaded, and I was just tired, and I was like, just listen and take naps. And I was lucky enough, I was afforded the ability to do so. So I did it. So, and I know maybe not everybody can do that if they're working or, with kids or whatever, but I highly, highly, as a mom, recommend every mom to just let someone watch your kids, right? Obviously someone you trust. But give yourself a break. It does take a village. And I've seen so many moms, vendors and non-vendors alike, who don't let them have that moment. I'm like, no, it's okay. Take your break, take a nap, have someone watch your kids so that you can do that reset. I think as a mom, we really need that, and we're not doing it. And there's so much guilt around it. And of course I have mom guilt, but I'll be totally honest, I've never had mom guilt about that.
Ever. I love that. Wow.
Ever.
Yeah, I'm so inspired by the women who are mothers and business owners, because that's something I think about a lot as somebody with no children. And I'm like, I am this exhausted. What would I do if I had to worry about another life besides my husband?
Because we have to worry about them too.
Yeah.
Yes. No, and it's a thing. And some days when you're on burnout, and then you're, like my kids are coming through the door, and some days it's great and it's heavenly, and then other days they're coming through the door and they're crying and they're fighting. And when your system's overloaded and you have anxiety and you have you can't even spare a moment to think yourself, and then all of this comes, and it does feel bombarding, and you're just like, what do you do? And you breathe. And we've been really blessed with a neighbor who helps us a lot. She's our adopted grandma, and I truly would not have this business without her. And so I just really encourage people, get out there, get your people who are going to help you, because it's important. So that's another thing that I would definitely recommend for kind of trying to regulate. And another thing that I do pretty common for regulating my system, because I've been trying to regulate my system since it's been out of whack naturally. And I do go to the gym. I mean, lately it's been like 5 days a week, and I need that. I need it. When I don't go, I'm just kind of frazzled, and I'm like, it has helped my anxiety levels so much. At first, when I started going, it was the only thing that would make me feel like I'm not walking off a cliff. But as soon as I left the gym, like maybe 30 minutes later, I would still feel that way. And I was like, oh my gosh, I could see why so many people are in the gym all the time.
Okay, I need to go to the gym with you.
Yeah, you should. It really helps. It really, really helps. And another thing that I did was, this sounds so funny, but I really, really, truly believe them. I started taking these supplements, and they've helped me so much. And they're Heart and Soil, and they're all natural, and they're one of the only things that I could find out there that was an actual all natural supplement for women to help with your hormones, which can also help with cortisol. And so that's where my mind was going. I'm not a doctor. I'm not, this is not like, oh, you should. But it really did help me, and I don't think I will ever not have these pills now. I would say within a week, I maybe went from like 20% of feeling like my normal me to like 80. And that's been really helpful. So exercise, prioritizing your time, and if you can, finding supplement or foods that help you. That was another thing. I started eating much cleaner when all this happened, and then just high protein to just try to,
Yeah.
and a combo of all of those really, really, really helped.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. That's some great advice. And I love that you mentioned going to the gym too, because I've tried to do just like home workouts, and I feel like it's different to actually go out and go to the gym instead of working out in your home. Because I do love working out in my home, but yeah, it's just something different about getting out and going to the gym.
It's so different. So I can work out at home, but I get bored.
Me too. I'm not as like motivated, or I don't see the people around me and I'm like, okay, I can push harder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And at the gym, you really do. One, I love our gym. I freaking love Mountain Range Fitness. I just love everybody there. You really don't feel judged there. And also, I've been going there for like 3 years now, 3.5 years. I don't remember. Anyways, everyone that comes to the classes are just awesome, awesome people. And you get to know them because they're like the same faces that you see. And we do push each other, right? Or like we tease each other, or like, hey, you can do one more. Or like yesterday, I was like, I don't think I can like bench press this. But then, the coach was like, yes, you can. And I hit a personal record because he was like, you can. And I was like, okay, I'll try. And I don't think I would have done that if I was by myself by any means.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm seeing all these familiar faces all the time, and it is fun. So if you want to go, I'll take you. It's fun.
Okay, yes. Yeah. I will hold you to that. We'll go to the gym together.
Okay.
I love that you mentioned the other people pushing you too, though, because I feel like when you're feeling burnt out, community is such a big thing. And just accepting help from others too, like you talked about earlier with your neighbor. And so, yeah, I just love that you mentioned having that community and just going out and meeting new people. And I also liked that you talked about reading, taking baths and reading, because I've also got into reading a lot, which I've talked about a little bit. And Celeste and I have like a little book club going. We actually, before she got here, I texted her and I was like, can you bring the next book? I'm almost done. Yes. So reading has been super helpful to me too. Yeah. And I feel like when you're burnt out, just being creative, but in a different area than your business. Yes. Like if you tried to be creative with flowers when you're feeling burnt out, that's not going to help. But if you're creative in like writing, because I know you also like to write, do you find that that helps you get a new inspiration?
Yes, and then sometimes I feel like they teeter on each other. So sometimes when I'm burnt out, it's like I can't even be creative. Like if I go to write, I'm just like, ew. Yeah. I don't even want to. Just 110%, like the desire's not there. But when I can kind of, I'm actively getting out of that burnout, and then I want the creative side of things, it is so helpful. And so, yeah, like this last summer when we did those creative shoots, it was so nice because I just felt like, in this repetitive rut, and was like, I just want to make something that no one is asking me to make. Yeah. One, because I wanted someone to ask me to make something different, but no one was. I feel like maybe it's the same for you as a photographer, but once you're kind of established in a style, people don't ask other things of you.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they just assume you don't want to do it, or maybe I don't know, and I think for a while I thought, like, do people just think I can't do this because I can do this?
Yeah.
Hello. But no one was asking, and I was like, I bet you it's just because of my style, and no one's going to ask me because of that. So I was like, well, let's just do something creative because I want to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I love that you brought that up. So let's actually talk about these three photo shoots that we did together.
Okay.
I really want to know like your reasoning behind all of them because I think it's really inspirational and I love how they all connect.
Okay. So for those of you who don't know, we did 3 photo shoots last year, and it started with Subdued, and then we went into Renegade, and then we went into Eldritch. And what inspired the 3 shoots was one, I had been writing a lot last summer, and I had been writing with a poet friend, Allie, who did Subdued. Allie was our model, and she was amazing. And I just had felt that spark again and was like, oh, but we could do this with flowers. Like, we could do this. And like, I know Sue would be down. Sue's very artistic. So, yeah, I just reached out to Sue, asked her if she would be willing, and she was more than willing, which was amazing. And we just decided to go for it. But I was inspired at the time because I was back into writing and reading poetry and doing these things, and I was surrounded with other creatives, and I think that was another sparking moment, like, oh man, look at these people being creative, like, yes, this is what I want, this is what I've been missing. And so I'm not sure exactly what brought on Subdued, but I think for me personally, when I'm writing poetry and I'm going into just that creative process, I really like words. I like the way words sound. And then when certain words have a great meaning behind it with a good sound, it pulls my attention. So subdued was one of those words that I was fixing on. And then um, I was also going through a phase at this time where I was listening to a lot of intentionally very beautiful music. Um,
Why don't you really quick explain what subdued means? Because I had to look it up when you're like, let's do this photo shoot. I was like, okay, but what does that mean?
but what does it mean? Okay, so my definition is kind of wordy, so we'll actually just look up the definition because it is very to the point.
Okay.
But it's like an overcome, quieten, or bring under control feeling or person. So when I think of subdued, I think of someone who maybe they're sitting there and they're appearing quiet and maybe even sullen in a way, but they're still seeing and observing, and maybe they have something that they want to say, maybe they have something to contribute, but they're thinking about it first, they're really sitting on that, and then that it kind of comes with this sad undertone to it as well. And I've never thought about subdued as being like, oh, lack of confidence. I just think it's kind of this thoughtful process.
Yeah, I loved when you introduced the first concept to me because when I looked up what subdued was, I was like, this is me. Like shy, quiet, but still has stuff to say and wants to feel seen, but
Yeah.
just kind of like I don't know. I felt like I really resonated with that concept. So it just made the experience so much more intimate and impactful.
Yeah. And then I loved it. That shoot just like filled my cup so much. And I was so glad that we still some of my all-time favorite photos, by the way. I just look
Mine
at the
too.
album sometimes. I'm like, oh, it just feels
Yeah.
peaceful. But yeah, so that was awesome. And then moving on from subdued.
Actually, before we move on to
Yeah.
from subdued, let's go into it a little bit more. First, I want to say I love how you got your creativity from writing first, and then the way you wanted to express that creativity was with photography.
Hmm.
Two things that aren't your business, aren't your profession,
No.
the thing you normally do, but you're like, somehow I'm going to include flowers in this also. Because, of
Yes.
course, that is your
Yeah.
passion.
It's an important part, and I totally skipped it. Yes.
Yeah, so each of these photo shoots are based around like flowers, and you use flowers a lot. So I just love that you got your creativity from the poem and from photography and from flowers. But with the subdued photo shoot, let's talk about really quick how you kind of put each photo shoot together, like how you picked your model and everything else you did.
Perfect. So, Allie was a poet friend who I had been doing art with for a little bit last year, and just knew right away I wanted her to be the model. And then I really wanted her to be the model when I found out that she used to do ballet, and I was like, "Excuse me."
Yeah,
So,
dancers are such good models.
oh, so good. And she's also just this embodiment of confidence. But when you also really know Allie, she's also subdued in a way, and she's also really looking at people, really seeing who they are. Um, and I just love that about her. And so I was just like, man, I just know that Allie's going to be perfect for this, and hopefully she'll say yes. And when I asked her, she was excited, and I was like, yes, yes, thank you. Um, and so bringing Allie in, I think, made it super easy also, because she is a dancer and she is confident and she is artistic, and um, she's just this little glowing light to be around. But the flowers, doing that with her was awesome. So what I was thinking with the flowers for the subdued shoot was I wanted soft, thoughtful flowers. So doing like we had kind of like the ikebana on the ground with the sand, which to me the texture of sand is soft, and then the flowers coming out, and they were very, I would say almost wispy, and just really reflective. That's what I was trying to go with the flowers there.
I would say even raw
Yeah.
too, because Allie, the model, she had multiple outfits, but they were all kind of very soft, but also revealing a little bit, as
Yeah.
in like what the last one we did was almost like a bodysuit, and it was nude colored, and it was almost just revealing all of the emotions and all of the raw.
Yeah, and then just letting the flowers that we attached flowers onto her body, and letting that speak for itself. And yeah, I feel like everything for that one just was so seamless, and it was perfect. And in your studio, it was perfect.
Yeah, and my experience with this photo shoot, and part of the reason that it helped me feel so inspired and so healed, is partly because it was with two amazing ladies who I loved working with, but it was the part that comes into just taking away the pressure when you do something like this that's just for fun. And it's like, we don't care what the result is. We're here for the experience. We're here to create this art and express these feelings. And it doesn't matter how the photos come out. We're just doing this for us. And so going into the photo shoot with that mindset and that process was really inspiring for me. And it helped me to also connect with Allie, the model, because of course it took us like a little bit to warm up. She did really good from the beginning, but by the end of the photo shoot, I felt like we were bonded.
Yes.
Like the three of us, like we almost were breaking down because we were so just invested and emotional, and we just put our hearts into this photo shoot.
And none of us wanted to leave.
Yeah.
Al was like, I have to
How
leave.
long was it? Like 5 hours?
It was a while, and we were like, it'll only be like an hour, and we just kept rolling with it. And I'm so glad we did. Yeah.
So all of it just came together so beautifully, and it had photography and poetry, but Celeste also made a playlist.
I did, yes.
And didn't you write a poem?
I did write a poem. Yeah, I wrote a poem for each shoot that we did. And that was the caption that came with it once we revealed them. But yeah, and then I just think it's so important to pull, what am I trying to say? Pull inspiration, yes, from all different mediums. And so music was one of the other ones. And like I had said, I was listening to a lot of pretty music at this point. I was really going into a lot of classical music last summer and just feeling it. And now I'm sold. I listen to a lot of classical music now.
Oh.
And yeah, making her playlist was awesome. It's still one of my favorite playlists. I listen to that one a lot, but I like sad music also. So
Yeah, I loved it. And so we played the playlist while we did the photo shoot,
mm-hmm.
and it also just put us in the mood, and it was so great. Okay, so let's talk about the hint that we included in that photo shoot that kind of led to the next, because
Yes.
all three of the photo shoots are connected and they kind of tell a story.
Yes. So we did a hint at the end where we crush a flower and then open the hand. And then it was lovely because you got it on film. I don't remember what your film was but it was actually like a little video. Maybe it was one of our phones. Maybe you just did it on a phone, but it was perfect. But we also photographed it.
Yeah.
And so we used that as a hint into the next shoot, which is Renegade. And for me, the thought process there was, okay, like, you know, we have this subdued, but like we're going to open up. And what happens when we open up? And, you know, a renegade in certain lights, you could kind of say is like a rebel. And I just think that a lot of subdued people, or at any point, anybody who's subdued in their life, you know, has this kind of moment of calm or whatever you would like to call it. But then we have these clarifying moments where it's like we open our eyes and then we're like, hey, wait a second. I can speak up. I can say something. I can show you that I can do this. You know, just because I seem quiet or reserved does not mean that I am lacking. And so that was the idea of walking into the next one, which was Renegade, which is like, hey, I'm a renegade.
Okay, I actually looked up the definition of renegade, and it is a person who deserts and betrays an organization, country, or set of principles. Mm-hmm. So basically, like you said, having this idea of how you need to be. Like maybe if you're very shy and quiet, you feel like you need to be that way, but then renegade is deserting those principles of feeling like that's how you have to be and just kind of opening up and figuring out who you are.
Yes. Yeah. And so that was the idea with walking into Renegade is you can open up into that. You can open up into your power, into your light, whatever you want to call it, but you can be seen. And it doesn't have to be how you've always been seen, which is nice because we're people and I feel like everybody shifts, everybody changes. And maybe we're just missing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why don't you explain what your vision was for the Renegade photo shoot?
Okay, so with Renegade, we had McKenna, and she's lovely, and her farm was also lovely. It was perfect location. I chose McKenna because she's just so perfectly feisty. I don't think I could explain that any other way. She is this wonderful mom, friend, person who, when you meet her, I think people are kind of surprised because she's got this like humor that sneaks out, and she's witty, and she has this little fiery side to her. I should ask her what her sign is. Yeah. I don't know. But it's like this little flame, and it just is catching. And so I was like, I feel like McKenna would be great at this. And she's, you know, I feel like has had some personal stuff in her life also that she's done that. She's been a renegade. She's opened up and become her own person despite anything in her past or, you know, perceived ideas. But I just had this idea, okay, like, what if we have this, you know, woman who's on the farm and, you know, it seems like, yep, she's going about doing her daily things, but then she has these moments where it's almost like she's, you know, not like angry, but a little like, okay, I'm going to get these emotions out there, and does something unexpected. And so we had one, I just loved that shoot because aesthetically it's very pretty. I loved all of those things. I also, I just love like cottagecore vibes, and I feel like that was kind of like this farm cottagecore. But when we had her doing some more like sultry poses, and maybe, like we had her flip off the camera at one point, and just doing like a few things, but she has such great eyes, and her eyes were just speaking so well through her photos, and or through the photos. And then when we had her flip the table, like, it was this whole idea. We had this set table, and we made it look pretty. There was real glass, everything on it, and we had her flip it. And that was the idea of, hey, I'm a renegade, and I don't need you to have these expectations pinned on me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's such a great explanation of it. So, what was your thoughts in creating the playlist for this one?
It was a little more challenging. So, my thoughts for creating the playlist for this one was that I wanted songs that portrayed this emotion of like, hey, I'm actually right here. And it took me a little bit to find songs for that. It was a little more challenging, like I said. But once I did, there were some really good ones that were like, oh yeah, and it had a little flair to it. And it was more, I guess, alive, for lack of a better word, compared to Subdued, where Subdued was more just like, calm waters. This one was more like, oh, we're going into rapids.
And what did you do with your flowers? How was your approach different with setting up your flowers?
Oh, so this one, that was easy because I wanted it to look very like vintage farm. And so it was so simple to just bring the flowers from the farm. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is not, it wasn't as challenging, I would say, because the flowers from the farm speak for themselves. And then just making sure that I had the right vessels that did have this vintage flair. That was probably the most challenging part, is just sourcing the right things. But otherwise, the flowers on that one just were, flower farm flowers. Yeah.
Yeah. Did we include any hint in this one to go to the next one? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. I think we had thought about it, and then I was like, I don't really know exactly how to hint about. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go on to the last of the 3 photo shoots.
Okay, so the last photo shoot we did was Eldritch, which is a word for, you might use it as like, that's an eldritch cry or an eldritch scream, which is like this eerie, ghostly scream or cry. Just odd, different, weird.
Yeah, so the definition is strange or unnatural, especially in a way that inspires fear.
Yep.
I didn't know the last part, actually. The fear part.
So, that was also, once again, just another word that I fell in love with and was like, ooh, and it resonates. So Eldritch came with the idea, kind of closing the 3 creative shoots in the idea of, okay, sometimes we're subdued and we're quiet, but then we step up and we're like, hey, like, I'm not just that. And then Eldritch, I think a lot of people who really come into their own will oftentimes have these moments of clarity where they're like, oh, maybe, doing things a little different, or I'm a little weird, or I'm a little odd, and like, I like it. And I think everybody in their life should find that point at least once. So Eldritch was this idea of like, oh, okay, let's go do something that's like a little more different, eerie, dark, mysterious, and just kind of not the norm.
It also worked out perfectly that this photo shoot fell in October.
Yes. Yes, and that the farm just lasted so long this year, to have all the dahlias and stuff for that shoot. But yeah, so we for that one, our model was Donnie, and she actually works with me, but she's just, I thought she was perfect.
She was so great.
And just, she's different and unique in all the best ways. And she was so excited to do it. When I asked her, she was like, "What the funky chicken?" Like, yes, I want to do that.
What's the funky chicken?
In Donnie's own words, yes. So it was super awesome, and I just loved how she also just embodied it totally.
Yeah,
and
she did. She
was
was so willing.
Right up my alley, and I was like, great.
Yeah, she did everything we asked to. So let's set the scene a little bit.
Because this was the most crazy one, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were looking for a waterfall.
Yes, Adrenaline Falls. And it had been like a decade since I had been there. And I didn't think about the trees growing or anything like that. And so it's an adventure to get there. We're driving. Thank God Sue has service, because I'm like, I think I can remember how to get there. There's, markings on the trees. We'll see it. We get there, and I don't recognize it because it's been like 10 years. So shocker. But Sue was able to pull it up on GPS, and it showed, which is amazing, because back in the day it did not.
The only thing we were looking for was the markers on the trees.
Yes, and the road was nuts.
Yeah, it was. It was crazy.
Yeah, and then, yep.
So we passed it. We ended up passing it, and we had to turn around and go back. Mm-hmm. But we did find it, and I'm shocked that she could recognize it, because just somebody driving through would not know that there's a trail there.
You'd have no idea.
It's literally just the carvings in the trees. So it felt really cool, because it was almost like this secret little passage we were going to, the secret little trail. So that was really cool, and almost even eerie in itself.
It was eerie. It is eerie because the road is also, if you don't have 4-wheel drive, you're not going on that road, or you shouldn't, really. We had my truck, and when we got down and we had to turn around, I mean, the road is tiny. For anybody who doesn't know mountain pass, like old style roads, they're not very wide. So we luckily found a spot where I was able to, inch around and turn around. And then we went back, and, there's still sunlight, but it's falling over the mountains. So we know we're going to have light for a while, but we're in the shade. And it was kind of eerie.
It was.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's no one around. And sometimes when someone is around, it feels more eerie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we ended when it was pitch black. We shot for a while, and we had to hike back up in the dark.
We did. Carrying
all of our stuff. But why don't you go ahead and explain kind of your idea with the flowers for this one and the music?
Okay, so the music for this one was this one was easy for me too, because I love eerie, weird, oh my gosh, I went through a weird eerie music phase when I was in college. So I just kind of went back to that, pulled some of that out, and then just finding those songs that have that sad, eerie undertone that, if you were listening to this in the forest, you're kind of like, oh, that's a little creepy.
It was. I loved the music. It really set the tone.
Yeah, but then also some of them were so beautiful too.
Yeah. And some of the shots we got with the photography, it was we had this sheer sheet. Is that what it was? Mm-hmm. And we put it over her, so it was almost ghostly. Yeah. And it just turned out so beautiful with her flowers. Wait, will you share the flowers that you got for this?
Yes, yeah. So I took a lot from the farm. It was the last little drag before, frost was coming. So a ton of dahlias, and I was so excited to do this because, I took a lot of flower frogs, and we just put a bunch on the ground as well, just to leave them as their own statement while having Donnie with an antique chair. And then when we got down to Adrenaline Falls, it was also just, one, speaks for itself down there. It's really cool. And I had done different weird flower crowns for Donnie to wear, and my favorite was probably the crown that we then put the sheet over, and it just looks very eerie.
Okay, I'm shocked you're forgetting to mention one flower. The carnivore.
Yes. Oh my gosh. No. Okay. Yes. So we made bouquets. I made bouquets, and one of them was my absolute. Oh, yeah, I can't believe that. There was a bouquet that had carnivorous plants, pitcher plants, and I got them locally actually from a buddy who grows them. Super super cool. His name's Willie Brock, and he just grows these because he loves them. And so I was very fortunate that he gave me some of his best pitcher plants to use this.
Explain what they do.
Okay, so pitcher plants are like these kind of tall, kind of not funnelish, but like a tube, and they have really pretty colors and variegation. They can be like green or like reddish, white, and they're just super unique looking, cool texture. You can see inside the pitcher where, you know, there's like almost these little like hair like things and spots, and it, you know, they sound weird when you talk about
they
them.
do. I'll share a picture.
Yeah, but they're absolutely amazing. And so they were just super weird and funky and, you know, kind of this eerie plant, which felt perfect for the shoot, and it totally was. So and that bouquet was also just probably the most unique bouquet I've ever made. And that was the goal with these flowers, was just something different, unique, something you're not going to see every day. Yeah, something just weird.
Yeah. And don't the flowers eat? What do they eat?
They do. So they have like a... Willie's going to kill me if I do this wrong.
Oh no.
No, he won't really. I'll just be like, what are you talking about, Celeste? So they have kind of like a sticky residue inside that attracts insects. And so once they get inside, they're trapped. And then the plant will actually consume it, basically digest it. If you think about how we put compost back into, you know, plants are consuming that. So that's, you know, they take that, renew that energy.
See, that is crazy to me because I've heard of like the Venus flytrap that eats flies.
Yes.
But I didn't know there was a flower out there that ate things like that.
Oh my gosh, there's some crazy flowers. There's some huge ones in, I believe it's the Amazon. I don't know, they're huge, and like you'll have to look them up.
Okay.
There's a plethora, I think.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that when I met Celeste and we were like doing this photo shoot, she first told me about the flowers because she was so excited for these flowers, and so they just fit the photo shoot perfectly, and the fact that they were carnivorous. Is that the right word? Yeah. So that was really cool. And also, I mentioned this was at a huge waterfall. Keep in mind, this is October in Colorado. Like, the water was not warm, and Donnie just got in the water, and she got all the way in, actually.
She was such a trooper.
Yeah, up to her neck.
Yeah.
And it was dark. So, like, it was nighttime in October in Colorado.
And we're all trying to step and not fall, and it was a challenge.
Yeah, and we were like an hour and a half away from like the town. Like we were out in the mountains.
Yeah, we were where there was nothing. So really, in hindsight, like if one of us would have fallen and gotten hurt, we probably maybe should have replanned that when it was more light. But I think it was perfect. It worked out perfect, and I loved the dark shots, like the night. I loved them. Yeah. Where the flowers and the fabric are in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, so that photo shoot was just, everything just flowed so well, and it all just embodied Eldritch.
Yeah, it did. It was amazing.
So, after like having this idea in your mind of what you wanted to do for these photo shoots and then executing them, how did you feel afterwards after seeing the creative vision come to life?
Oh, I felt really fulfilled. Yeah, I felt like, take a deep breath. That was really nice. And then, yeah, it just felt really good to be creative also. And I feel like when I force myself to be creative, sometimes it doesn't always feel that way. But sticking with those and like doing that even through our busy season just really helped me stay in a creative mindset.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And these 3 words, did you feel personally connected to them too?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. I feel like I grew up through all of those phases, you know?
Yeah.
Went through them.
And I feel like that explains so many people too.
Yeah. And that's why I was hoping people would relate to it also. And I did get a lot of people who did.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if I ever told you that.
No,
I had
you
people
didn't.
message me.
Really?
Yeah, about each one. Like, I had some people who were like, oh my God, I I totally, yeah,
That is so
like
cool.
I relate to this or this, yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because I feel like there's just so much depth into these photo shoots, and it was hard to really tell the story online.
yeah,
Because I was like, there's so much going into these. We need a better way to really share the story
To
because
share
it's
this.
just beautiful, and it was a transformative time for me
Yes.
too.
I was so glad and I was so happy when you told me that, you know,
Yeah,
was how that went for you.
yeah.
Because I was honestly a little timid. I was a little scared. I was like, I don't want her to think I'm like taking advantage of her.
Oh no, no. I think that helped build our relationship too because I
lot.
love the relationship we have and I think it's so powerful to just collaborate
Yeah.
with somebody in your industry. Like if you're a photographer and you're feeling kind of lonely, you don't have to just reach out to photographers. Get yourself a florist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, well, I have one more question for you,
Yeah.
Celeste. If you could go back and tell your younger self who's just starting her flower business one thing, what would you say?
I feel like so many people would tell themselves this if they could go back, and it would just be to not listen to outside voices that you don't think you should listen to. Simple as that. Just don't give it the time of day. And that is something that this business has forced me to get better at because I just felt like I did listen to a few things that maybe I shouldn't have, or, I knew deep down, don't listen, but I did. And now I've come up with a way to shuck those things away. So when something happens, right? Right, someone giving advice that necessarily you're like, wait, that's not me, that's not for me. Like maybe maybe you mean well, but that's not for me. Or as a business owner, having someone say something negative to you about, and you're just like, but you don't, okay, one, you don't know, you're not walking in my shoes, like this is what I do all the time, this, so now when I get anything that I don't want to listen to, I give myself a timeline, and I'm like, okay, by tomorrow morning I'm not going to think about it anymore.
Wow, that's great advice, especially for social media.
Yeah.
Because there can be a lot of negativity on there if you get yourself in the wrong spot.
So much, yeah. So I just make myself now. I'm like, okay, I am not going to let that bother me starting tomorrow at this time. And I really try to hold myself to it. And it works, I'd say, like 90% of the time.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to have to try out that tactic.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you,
Why don't you tell everyone where they can find you? Okay.
So Celeste at Lady Southwest. You can find me on Instagram. It's just lady_Southwest. LadySouthwestFlorals.com. Or if you're around the area, I live in Dolores, Colorado, and I pop up here and there. But you can find me on Google.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, you.